here we have the ocean, a place I would love to be at right now. Now anyways, in this video, we're going to be talking about a very important topic that comes up so much in biology, right? You're in topic 1 now, but basically you'll see this come up again and again, okay? It's a very important concept that you need to grasp. And to be honest, it's one of the more difficult ones to explain, so I'm going to try my best and I hope that it can come across as clear, but it is a bit tricky. So anyways, the topic is surface area to volume ratio, okay? So let's try and get into this. So picture a person, okay, any person. I picked here Phineas, okay, from Phineas and Ferb. And we know so far from studying topic 1 that we living things are made up of trillions of what? Cells, right? Cells, the smallest living things. If our cells can't function properly, then they will die. And if our cells die, that means we die because we are made up of cells. So it's very important that our cells can function efficiently, okay? Now, what do I mean by efficiently? So a cell is kind of like a house, okay? It makes some waste, it makes some trash that needs to be removed from the house. Otherwise, it builds up and the house gets stinky and starts not working properly. And it's not a nice place to live and it starts getting broken, okay? So it's important for the cell, wherever trash builds up, whether it be in the middle of the cell, here, wherever, that it can be sent out of the cell, okay? Excreted from the cell, okay? Getting rid of, okay? At the same time, the cell will also bring in some valuable thing, okay? We're gonna use Bitcoin here, whatever, okay? Any valuable material that the cell needs, that needs to go in. Kind of like in the household, we need money to come in and a couch to come in, okay? All these useful things that the house needs, right? So the point is, things need to be able to leave easily and come in very, very sufficiently. In that way, the cell will survive very efficiently, okay? Now, my question to you is, why do cells not keep growing and growing? Why are we not made up of really, 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 really big cells? Why are we made up of super, super tiny cells? Why do they get to a certain size and then divide by mitosis, okay, before they get too big? Why is that? Why don't we have such big cells? Why so tiny cells? Let me explain. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So I'm gonna try my best here. So let's picture this. Let's pretend this is a cell, okay? A cell here, okay? It's see-through here, so there's nothing inside for now, just for the sake of this explanation. But let's pretend this is the cell. And we give it dimensions, okay? 1 by 1, okay? 1 by 1 by 1, it's a cube. Now, if we measure the surface area, that means the total area of the outside, the membrane, okay? If you know something about math, right? It's basically the total membrane that there is, okay? The membrane. We don't care about the inside or anything like that. We're only measuring the membrane, the amount of membrane there is, okay? That's surface area. So how much surface area does this cube have? It's gonna have a surface area of 6, okay? I could have put any unit here. I could have put centimeters, meters, micrometers, nanometers, whatever. For a cell, it's probably going to be micrometers. But anyways, we don't care about the unit now. So how do we calculate the surface area? It is going to be 1 times 1. In that way, we find the surface area of one side. But we know there are 6 sides to this cube. So then we times it by 6, okay? So that's going to be 6. The surface area, the total amount of membrane is going to be 6, okay? Now, what about volume? If we want to calculate the amount of space, amount of volume, amount of space on the inside of this cube, what is that? We know volume is base times height times width. So 1 times 1 times 1, okay? Because it's a cube. So that's going to give us what? 1, right? So the volume is going to be 1. So what's the ratio between the surface area and the volume? It's going to be 6 to 1, right? Because for every 6 surface area, the volume is 1, okay? So the ratio is 6 to 1. Pay attention to this. Now, what about if the cell gets bigger? How is this concept going to change here, okay? First, we're going to see how it changes, and then I'm going to explain why this matters, okay? So let's say we have a bigger cell. Now it's 2 by 2. So the surface area will be what? 2 times 2 times 6, which is 24. And then the volume is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So now notice the ratio is 24 to 8. If we simplify this, so we simplify both sides, we get 3 to 1, right? 3 to 1. So notice what happened to the ratio. It's not 6 to 1 anymore. It's now 3 to 1, okay? The surface area is now smaller of a ratio than before. Before, the surface area was so much bigger than the volume. Now, it's not that much bigger. It's only 3 times bigger. In the first example, it was 6 times bigger than the volume. Now it's only 3 times bigger. So what does this mean? This means as the cell gets bigger, the amount of surface area doesn't get as big as the volume does. Okay, so the surface area increases, but not as much as the volume does. From the first cube, the volume increased by 8. The volume got multiplied by 8, but the surface area only got multiplied by 4. Okay, so as the cell gets bigger, here it is, as the cell increases, the surface area to volume ratio decreases. The volume gets much bigger while the surface area only gets a little bit bigger. Okay, that means the space on the inside gets much bigger while these walls, the membrane, doesn't get that much bigger. Okay, that's important to understand. So let's have one more example here. Even bigger. So now we have 3 by 3. Now, guess what will happen? Do you think this ratio will still decrease? Of course, right? So we have now a surface area of 54 and a volume of 27. The ratio is now 2 to 1. So notice from the first cube, the volume increased by 27 times, right? 27 times, whereas the surface area increased by way less, okay? So this means, again, as the cell gets bigger, the inside space, the amount of particles on the inside can get so much bigger, while the wall, the surface membrane, doesn't increase that much in size. Okay, now my question is, so this is the part we really cared about, this ratio part. Okay, now, okay, so maybe now you see it. Okay, I see the space inside gets much bigger than the surface area gets bigger. Okay, as the cell grows. So this makes sense. Okay, but why do we care about this? So there are 2 reasons why we care about this. Okay, 2 reasons. The first one is simple to explain. The second reason is a bit trickier to explain. Okay, the first one's easy though. So let me show you. Oh yeah, also, I have a cool diagram here, why this happens. So maybe you're confused thinking, okay, why does this ratio decrease? Like, why does it make sense? Like, why when this cell becomes this size, does this happen? Why does this happen? Why does the ratio not stay the same? Let me show you why. Because the original one, this one that we have this ratio, so we have this one, the middle cell, and we increase it by size, but the ratio gets smaller. But if we did this, if we took this cell, multiplied it by 8 to get the same size as the second cell, but instead it's made up of exact duplicates of the original one, then the ratio would be the exact same. Okay, so the reason why the ratio decreases is because all of this membrane that was made up in that are occupying all the cubes in the center here is not present here. All those membranes are gone. That's why the surface area, that's why the surface area doesn't increase as much as the volume. Okay, but if we were to exactly duplicate it and form the shape, then it would still stay the same because all the surface areas are still there. But because we only stretch out the cell, now all those membranes that are here present on this example aren't here, and therefore the surface area is much less. Okay, so I hope this diagram can clear up why it happens a little bit. Okay, now let's go to the reasons. So the reasons why an increase in cell is bad is because, one, this happens. So pretend we have a particle inside the cell. Okay, we know particles can be what? Trash or good. Okay, they can be good or bad. Maybe you want to get rid of them. Maybe we want to keep them or get them. Okay, so let's pretend this is a bad particle. So let's say this is heat. We want to get rid of some heat. You made some heat, but this is going to heat up the cell and might die. So we want to get rid of some heat particles. Now, in a small cell, this particle has a very short distance to travel. So it can get out of the cell really, really efficiently. Very short distance. It's like 1 split second and it's done. But if we have this bigger cell, the particles stay the same. So as the cell increases, all of the molecules inside your cell stay the same size. Okay, they don't increase as well. Everything, all the DNA, all the carbohydrates, they all stay the same size. So this means now as the cell gets bigger, these particles have a much greater distance to travel. This means if we want to get rid of this heat particle, it's going to take much more time than it did for a small cell. So this is one reason why it's insufficient, because to get rid of things takes longer. To get rid of trash takes longer. And as well, to get good things, such as a valuable material, into the cell also takes longer. It has to travel a greater distance to where it needs to be. Okay, so that's one reason. So I can summarize it as molecules have a further distance to travel when the cell increases in size. This means it takes longer to lose heat and waste and takes longer to gain essential materials. Okay, so this is one reason why as a cell gets bigger, it's bad, okay? This is one reason why as a cell increases, it reaches a limit and needs to divide. Otherwise, it gets too inefficient. Okay, so now I'm going to go over real quick to another more tricky explanation. Okay, so picture the first cell, okay, or this small cell here. Let's say its surface area is this and its volume is this, okay? So it has a ratio of 6:1. And let's say this thing in here is occupying all the volume, okay? So this red shape here is representing all the volume. So all of this, okay, this particle that's occupying all the volume has a surface area of 6 to leave from, okay? It has this surface area here, this one, this one, this one. Very many options to leave from, okay? So it many possibilities to escape, okay? But as the cell gets bigger, so say we multiply the volume by 8, this means we're going to have 8 of these red dots now, 8 of these molecules. But this time, the surface area only increased by 4, right? It only increased by 4. So the molecules increased by 8 because the cell got bigger, but the amount of surface area only increased by 4. This means that all of these molecules now have less space to leave from. In the original molecule here, this molecule had 6 areas to leave from, but now because the surface area didn't increase by 6 but only by 4, now each molecule here, each of these molecules have to share some membrane and have less membrane to exit from. So instead of, in the first example, being able to leave to a surface area of 6 for one molecule, now it's a surface area of 3 per molecule. So that means, again, this is adding to the amount of time it takes for things to move, because now each molecule needs to compete for the membrane, instead of in this one where it had infinite options. This one has less options now, only 3:1. So therefore it takes more time for these molecules to leave than in a smaller cell. So this is a really tricky explanation for me to give, but I hope this makes sense a little bit. So here's the words in a bit more clear terms. Each molecule, as the cell grows, has less membrane proportionally to exit from as the cell size gets bigger, because the surface area increases less than the volume does. Okay, so this again will add to the amount of time and efficiency for molecules to enter and leave. So overall, this is why surface area to volume matters. As the cell gets bigger, it has to stop at the specific point where it's very, very efficient, and before it gets inefficient. And at this point where it's very efficient, it's going to divide before it gets too big and inefficient. And that way your body can survive and your cells won't die and you'll live very, very efficiently. So you'll see this happens. You'll see this topic again in the future, I promise you. So I hope this made as much sense as possible. And let me know if anything didn't, and I can try and help you in the comments.